Shalom, back again with another lesson. And before I begin this lesson, I'd like to first begin by giving all honor, glory, and praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Recha Kodash. I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well, who I've learned this truth from. I want to say peace and salutations to you, Akim, you brothers out there laboring, pushing his word out in all truth and in sincerity, presenting your bodies as a living sacrifice, which is your reasonable service. I want to say shalom to you, Akwaf, you Israelite sisters out there listening, and also to you Israelites that are scattered across the four corners of the earth. You may look like these other nations, but your seed line goes back to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Shalom. So the opening clip I played is a viral clip that's been going around social media, which was created by Iran that foreshadows the destruction of America. So when you watch the clip, it starts by showing our Northern Kingdom brother standing and staring up at the sky, right? And you have the Iranian missile in the sky, which that's not being shown at this point in the beginning of the clip. But the one thing I wanted to focus on is that you hear the cry of the eagle, right? Which I took as a spiritual hint pointing to America being the intended target, right? So when we read in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 21, it says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Now, the horn that it's talking about here, so it says, I beheld, and the same horn, that's talking about America, right? It says, made war with the saints being the Israelites. So they were oppressing the Northern Kingdom, which is your Native American indigenous, and also your Latin tribes. And it also captured the Southern Kingdom, which is the so-called Black American, so-called Jamaican, and so-called Haitian, that makes up the Southern Kingdom. They also had them in slavery, right? So they went out to the west coast of Africa, captured the Southern Kingdom, and brought them over to the Americas. So it says, I beheld, and the same horn, America, made war with the saints, the Israelites, and prevailed against them. So America basically had us in captivity, a hardcore bondage, right? A hardcore oppression. Now, when we read in the book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 19, it reads, Gad, which is talking about the Gadites, the Gadite tribe, which is the Native American indigenous, right, says, a troop shall overcome him. Now, that troop that it's talking about is the Edomites, right, the U.S. cavalry that were on the horseback that made war against the Gadites, right? So you see, like when you watch a lot of movies about cowboys and Native Americans, they're, the films usually depict the war that they were having between, the two nations. So you had the Native Americans scalping the cowboys, and then you had the cowboys shooting the Native Americans. You know what I mean? Like, this is what they were portraying, right? And this is what they were doing, right? So it says, Gad, the Gadites, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last, meaning at the end, the Israelites are going to be restored into their rightful position, right? They're going to be exalted, right? So as we continue, we can dive a little bit deeper in that. You have the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and I believe it's 48. Let me just check. Yes, it is 48. So this is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 48. It says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord Yahweh shall send against thee, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he hath destroyed thee. Right? So when you see images and histories, you can see that not only was the Southern Kingdom had yokes of iron around their necks, you also had some images that depict the Northern Kingdom, like especially the Native American tribes. They had yokes around their necks, right? That goes to show you that we were being oppressed by these people, right? It says, and this gives you a little hint. This is why I picked up on the eagle cry, right? So verse 49, it says, the Lord Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So, the eagle is like the top bird of prey, right? And when it says the swift as the eagle flieth, meaning the speed of the eagle is unmatched, by any bird, right? Verse 50 says, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young, right? So they didn't care who they took over, and they didn't care, about any sort of treating them fairly or anything. We were their property, and they were oppressing us, right? So just to quickly go back to the book of Daniel, chapter 7, right? In verse 21, it says, and I beheld, and the same horn, America, made war with the saints and prevailed against them. As you read here in verse 22, it says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. So obviously we were going to be oppressed. And where it says in verse 21, it says, and prevailed against them, that's when the Lord is going to exalt us and put us back in our rightful rulership, right? But obviously not before we served out our punishment, which our punishment is getting ready to come to an end, right? Now, it said also that the Edomites would, or the nation that came from afar, would have a fierce countenance, right? So we're going to read in the book of Revelation, chapter 6, verse 4, right? So it says, and there, this is Revelation 6 or 4, it says, and there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him, that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword, right? Now, as we continue to watch the clip, you'll see all the other countries that have been impacted by the American imperialism war machine, right? So the clip, when you play it after, you see the Native American, it switches over to Hiroshima, right? You have the events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where America dropped the atom bomb on Japan. And obviously you can see from the clip that you see the devastation and the aftermath that, left the destruction that America made, right? America caused this, right? You also see what stands out is you see the young Japanese boy that has now been placed in a position where he has to survive with an infant baby. It's probably his younger brother or sibling, younger sister. Now he has to provide for that, and that's the damage that America's inflicted on Japan at that time, right? Where you notice, and also the young boy staring at the sky, watching the missile, which to me spiritually symbolizes that Japan has never forgot what America's done, and they're looking for the time when they get their get back, or that time where America receives its judgment for the things that they've done in the earth, right? Now I'm going to play this clip, right? Because there's I looked it up, and there was a story of a woman that basically lived in Hiroshima, and the day before they dropped the atom bomb, she took a trip to another location, and then obviously she explains her experiences to what she witnessed when she come back, right? So check this out.
On this day in 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Nagasaki. The bomb was codenamed Fat Man. About 40,000 people were killed immediately. This led to Japan's unconditional surrender in the Second World War.
No streetcar was running, and it was flat, completely flat. So I was able to walk from the East End train station, 8 rivers, 8 bridges, to home with this big bag of rice.
Shitama was 22 years old, living in Hiroshima, Japan in August 1945, when the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb over the city. But Shitama was not there. The day before, she had taken a train to a friend's house a few towns over to pick up a bag of rice. When she returned to the Hiroshima train station the next day, she faced a land ravaged by war. Shatama did not see a living soul on the several-mile trek to her family's home. When she arrived 4 miles from the epicenter of the bomb, the house was still standing, but the neighborhood was devastated.
But I say, this is what happened to those people down that were there, that felt the devastating effects of that time, right? So after Japan, you see that you have the woman in the wheat field in Vietnam. Now you had the time of Vietnam, America's involvement during that time in Vietnam, where yet again America did all kinds of atrocities to the people, including one of the worst things they could have done, which is still affecting people today, is by dropping Agent Orange. Right now, Agent Orange, if you haven't researched that, I'm just going to play a clip just so you can get an idea of what America did.
The Vietnam War poisoned the land on purpose. Between 1961 and 1971, the United States sprayed Vietnam with a chemical weapon called Agent Orange. The goal was simple: strip the jungle bare, expose guerrilla fighters, and end the war faster. Instead, over 20 million gallons of toxic herbicides fell on forests, farms, and villages. The chemical contained dioxin, one of the most dangerous toxins ever created. Crops died. Forests never recovered. Civilians were exposed without warning. Decades later, cancers, birth defects, and contaminated soil remain. The war ended in 1975, but in Vietnam, Agent Orange never did. Some weapons stop killing when the fighting ends. This one didn't.
So as you can see from that clip, the Vietnamese people, they were affected because America decided it was a good idea to pollute their lands, which is still affecting people's lives today, right? So again, you go back to the woman that's in the field, that's her looking up at the sky, looking at that missile traveling, through the different countries. She's looking at the missile, and she sort of, again, all these nations are remembering all the atrocities that America has done, right? So you can also, like the next clip, you see that the destruction in Yemen, right? Because they went up against Yemen, and you see the little girl in Palestine, right? She's looking up at the sky and she's got a big old smile on her face, right? Watching as the missile passes over, because obviously these countries are angry at America, right? This is why this resonates so much with people across the world, is because obviously you see what atrocities they've done in that land, Palestine, and they're like trying to divvy up the land and share it out and displace these people, right? So you see, so on and so on. You see in the next clip the little girl, and this is a missile that she's staring at, in regards to the revenge that or the judgment that America's getting ready to face for all the Epstein Island scenarios and all the things, atrocities that were committed on Epstein Island. You also have the little girls that America tried to lie and deny and say they didn't drop a bomb on a school full of little girls when they clearly did. It's all over the news and they can't deny it, right? So you see these women or these young girls, right, that were in the school being also looking up at the sky. They want revenge, right? They want revenge on the atrocities America has done, until the point where the missile reaches its target, right? Because they took out, not only did they take out the school of little girls, they took out Soleimani and also the Ayatollah, right? I guess that's his name. I'm not entirely sure, but they took him out as well, right? Until the missile reaches its target in America and destroys the Statue of Liberty, which in this video, or this clip, is depicted as the statue of Baal, which is associated with these elites in America of their satanic worship, right? So just before America's destroyed, just another thing to point out, in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 20, right, it says here, and I thought this was quite interesting, right? Because it says here in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, it says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, that's talking about America, it says, and before whom 3 fell, which is talking about France, Britain and Spain, right? Even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake very great things. That's talking about America, how they like to always talking about, America's the greatest army on earth. Who's going to stop us from doing X, Y, Z? They talk all these swelling words, right? So when it reads here, whose look was more stout than his fellows, he had that proud speak, that proud talk. Like he just doesn't have any filter on his mouth. He just speaks and talks all the rubbish and junk that he wants to talk, right? So I'm going to play some clips, just give you an idea of how Trump speaks, right? So this is an example of Trump speaking and being proud and speaking the way he does. Like, check this out.
I was disappointed because Keir was willing to send 2 aircraft carriers after we won, because essentially there's no threat for the aircraft carriers right now. And they said, no, we want things sent before the war, not after the war is won. So, I'm disappointed with Keir. I like him. I think he's a nice man, but I'm disappointed.
Do you have
Mr. President.
You see that man right there? You know who that is?
Churchill.
That's the late, great Winston Churchill. And Barack Hussein Obama did not want his bust in this office. Did you know that? And Barack Hussein Obama sent that bust back to England. They didn't want it. And when I came in, I was asked if I wanted it. I said, absolutely, I want it. And I put it right there, Winston Churchill. And, unfortunately, Keir is not Winston Churchill.
Keir Starmer has done a lot to reset the Irish-British relationship. I just want to put that on the record. But I do believe that he's a very earnest, sound person who I think you have a capacity to get on with, and you've got on with him before. And you've got on with other European leaders as well. Sure. And I think you have that capacity again. And I think everyone exists. I mean, you cannot have a rogue state with a nuclear weapon.
We had President Trump make a reference to Australia.
Australia, too. Australia was not great. I was a little surprised by Australia.
Not being very helpful in regards to potential requests to assist in the Middle East. What's your response to that?
Well, President Trump is someone who I've enjoyed a very constructive relationship with. I said very early on that I wasn't going to comment on all of his commentary on a day-to-day basis, but I again reiterate that there is no request being made to Australia that has not been agreed to. President Trump is up to him to explain his comments, but of course I make the point as well that Australia wasn't consulted before this action was undertaken, and I respect that. That's a matter for the United States.
Who knows better about surprise than Japan?
Why didn't you tell U.S. allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran?
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
Right. So that, as you can see, Trump, he ain't got no filter on his mouth, man. He insulted the Prime Minister of Japan, supposed to be one of his allies. She was gobsmacked when he said what he said, So anyway, I'm going to go to the book of Psalm, chapter 137. And here's verse 7. Yeah, so it says this, Psalms chapter 137, verse 7. It says, remember, O Lord, O Yahweh, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, race it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, that's talking about America, O daughter of Babylon, who art to be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Right? So, all the atrocities that these Edomites have done since, obviously, the Israelites, the sons of Jacob, received that blessing. Esau has just been on the warpath. That was his blessing, the sword. right? So now his judgment is getting ready to turn upon his own head, right? Verse 9 says, happy shall he be that taketh and dashes thy little ones against the stones. Now, if you remember, during the time of slavery, you know, the Edomites, right, didn't take any consideration for the old and showed no favor to the young. So everything that they've done is getting ready to turn back on their own head. So it says, happy shall he be that taketh and dashes thy little ones against the stones. You know, that's what's coming to America, because America is destined to be destroyed, right? And just to back that up, I'll play I'll read a few scripts, and then we'll close it off there. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 17 and verse 16. And it reads, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore. That's talking about America. And shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So, hey, America's getting ready to be destroyed, man. And its allies are going to turn on it as well, because America just needs to be stopped, right? So when we read in the book of Revelation, chapter 6 and 13, this is what it says. It says, let me highlight this. It says, and the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs, when she is shaken of a mighty wind. Now, I'm going to play this clip, right? I'm going to play this clip, and I want you to see what it looks like when the star, like, because John the Revelator is seeing this vision, and he's trying to describe it the best way he can. So he describes it as the stars fell from heaven, which would look something like this, right? So that's something that he would have envisioned, right? So verse 14, Revelation 6 and 14, it says, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And something with that much power looks something like this. So as we can see, America is destined to be completely destroyed, right? Now, I'm going to leave it here because, you know, I just wanted to speak on that viral clip, because to me, it was a spiritual AI video that was created, and we saw the destruction of America, right? And the satanic Baal worship, right? So I pray that this lesson has been edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. And with that, I want to give double honors to my elders and apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone, who taught me this truth, who rule well. I want to say peace and salutations to you hopeful elect. And it's on to the next lesson, Lord willing. Shalom.